Your hurdle to clear, the third and final debate. We're looking forward to that. Good morning to you. I'm John Scott.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jenna Lee. And Hillary Clinton is off the campaign trail today, preparing for her final showdown with Donald Trump, hosted by Fox News anchor Chris Wallace. While Mr. Trump heads to Wisconsin for a rally tonight as he ramps up claims of a rigged election, amid questions about what those claims could do to the democratic process down the line.
This as two national polls give us a new look at the state of the race. An ABC News Washington Post poll shows Clinton leading Trump by 4 points in a four-way race. And an NBC News Wall Street Journal poll shows Clinton with an 11-point lead over Trump.
We have Fox team coverage. Rich Edson is following the Clinton campaign in Chappaqua, New York. But we begin with our senior national correspondent, John Roberts, who's live outside Trump Tower in New York City. John?
Jenna, good morning to you. And Donald Trump is pursuing the strategy of saying that the system is rigged against him for a couple of reasons. First of all, it energizes his voters to get out to the polls. And secondly, potentially, he is laying the groundwork here to lay blame if things don't go his way on November the 8th. He's really weaving a tale of a conspiracy of collusion between the media and the Clinton campaign to stop him from gaining the Oval Office, to crush his movement. Today, tweeting out, quote, "Can't believe these totally phony stories, 100% made up by women, many already proven false, are pushed big time by the press, have impact." And then he tweeted out this: though there's no proof that there's ever any widespread fraud or corruption in the actual voting process, he said this morning, of course there is large-scale voter fraud happening on and before Election Day. Why do Republican leaders deny what's going on? So naive. His running mate, though, at the same time is dialing that back a little bit. Mike Pence saying yesterday morning on the Sunday shows he at least has faith in the voting process. Listen to what he said.
We will absolutely accept the results of the election. The American people are tired of the obvious bias in the national media. That's where the sense of a rigged election goes here. We're going to accept the will of the American people, but between now and Election Day, we're going to work our hearts out against all odds, against most of you in the national media. Well, we're going to go lay out a story for a stronger, more prosperous America.
So you catch it there, Mike Pence saying rigged does not relate to the voting process. It's the political process surrounding this election. Donald Trump is going to meet with his National Security Advisory team this morning. Then he'll do most of the day of debate prep, and then he's heading to Green Bay, Wisconsin tonight. You might remember a couple of months ago, August the 5th, Donald Trump at a rally in Green Bay threw his support behind Paul Ryan, endorsed him for re-election in his primary, now at war with the Speaker of the House, tweeting out yesterday, quote, "Paul Ryan, a man who doesn't know how to win, including failed run 4 years ago when he was Mitt Romney's running mate, must start focusing on the budget, military, vets, etc." Those are the issues that Donald Trump wants to focus on at Wednesday night's debate. But he's got a big hurdle that he's got to get over, because surely he will be asked about all of these allegations from these 9 women coming forward in these last few days. He needs to have a good answer for that so that he can move on to the issues. And people inside his campaign tell me at the moment he does not yet have that good answer. But they are hopeful, saying, look, going into the beginning of September, he was 11 points down. He drew to even. He's down 4 points in a couple of new polls now. They're down 11 in another one. They believe that if he has a good debate on Wednesday night, and then there's not this drip, drip, drip of all these further allegations dogging him for the next 3 weeks, he may be able to pull even again and have at least a 50-50 chance of pulling out a win on Election Day. Jenna?
Still 3 weeks to go. We want to remind everybody about that as well. John, thank you very much.
Well, let's turn to the Democratic side of things. Hillary Clinton taking time off the campaign trail today at her home in Chappaqua, New York, ahead of the final presidential debate Wednesday in Las Vegas. That's where we find Rich Edson in Chappaqua, live right now. Rich.
Hey, good morning, John. And Hillary Clinton has been home in Chappaqua, New York since Saturday. She's taking a few hours each day to prepare for her third and final debate with Donald Trump on Wednesday. She has made no public appearance since her last campaign event on Wednesday, the previous Wednesday, though she did allow cameras into a couple of fundraisers towards the end of last week. Clinton herself is spending less time at campaign events than her opponent or any other major party candidate since 2008. This according to a review by the Boston Globe. In its analysis, the Boston Globe finds over the past 2.5 months, Clinton has held 52 campaign events. Donald Trump over that time has had 88. Over the same time period in 2012, President Obama held 74, Mitt Romney 76, And in 2008, Obama appeared at 108. That is more than double Clinton's 2016 tally. Senator John McCain that year was up to 100. So Clinton is leaving much of this campaigning to surrogates and also videos. Her campaign is releasing a new ad in several battleground states, including Florida, Ohio, and North Carolina. It shows famous movie characters, bullies in fact, from movies like Back to the Future and Biff Tannen, and the Karate Kid's Sweep the Leg, Johnny Lawrence. It splices in video of Trump, and at the end shows Hillary Clinton showing compassion towards a girl who says that she has been bullied at school. Yesterday, Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders were campaigning in Colorado for Hillary Clinton. The Clinton campaign needs that faction of the Democratic Party to show up on Election Day. Perhaps could be a little problematic showing these WikiLeaks email releases that we've seen from John Podesta's email over the last few weeks shows some of Hillary Clinton's paid speeches to Wall Street and a much more favorable position, let's say, towards Wall Street than she has been showing in some of her public remarks. The Clinton campaign has been aggressive in trying to combat the WikiLeaks releases. However, the Clinton campaign refuses to address the content of the emails, refuses to address whether they're actually authentic emails. Instead, they deflect and talk about how this is a massive crime, an unprecedented one, perhaps akin to the Watergate break-in 40 years ago, and then charges the Russian government for perpetrating such a crime and saying that the U.S. government should be outraged at the fact that the Russians are trying to interfere this much in a U.S. election. John and Jenna, back to you.
Looks like a nice day in Chappaqua, New York. Rich Edson, thanks.
Very nice.
For more on the state of the race, let's bring in two campaign veterans. Joe Trippi, former Howard Dean campaign manager, and Karl Rove, former senior advisor and deputy chief of staff to George W. Bush, both Fox News contributors. Great to have you both as we take in the political scene. Here we are 3 weeks before the election. Karl, I'm curious what you think about what this pollster said for the Wall Street Journal. He said at this point, he's a Democratic pollster, he said at this point in the race, the cake is baked. Do you agree?
I don't. Look, we have a number of polls out. The Wall Street Journal NBC poll shows the biggest margin for Clinton of all of the polls. ABC Washington Post has a 4-point margin. The Real Clear Politics average is 5.5. The Fox poll has a 7-point. So I think the NBC Wall Street Journal poll may be an outlier. May have just caught up to too rich a night for Hillary Clinton. I think the race is much closer. And look, this race he's got an uphill climb, no doubt about it. Very difficult to see how he gets there, but this race has had a lot of twists and turns, and I think it's got a few more left in it.
Joe, your thoughts?
Look, I don't know that it's baked in the cake, but it's going to be a big uphill battle for him to get there. I mean, whether it's the 11 points in the NBC Wall Street Journal or the 7 points Fox shows or the 4 points, Washington Post ABC poll, even the bottom edge of that range, the 4 points, Barack Obama won in 2012 by 3.9 points and got 332 electoral votes. All signs, when you look at the Real Clear Politics average of 5.5 point lead that Clinton has. So, unless he can somehow use this debate to get people to take another look at him and sort of reopen people's eyes, I don't think there's any chance here.
Well, the numbers in the past, let me ask you, Joe, about that, because if you looked at the numbers way early in the campaign, when we were still maybe even in the primaries, if you went according to popular thought, Donald Trump would not be the candidate that we're talking about today. He continues to fill these rally spaces with 10,000 people. There still is a great deal of enthusiasm. What about that, which is the thought that this individual, many thought would never make it to this point, and he did, and he continues to stay in the race?
Well, I mean, two things. First of all, in the Washington Post poll, ABC poll, you have actually Hillary Clinton exceeding Trump for energized supporters, which even I find would never have predicted. But she's got 83% that are enthusiastic. He's got like 78%. He's actually losing ground there on the energy side, which is not something that's good for him either. But the other thing I think that is about this sort of baked in the cake thing, early in the primaries, people say, well, maybe he'll pivot, and they give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he'll pivot, give him the benefit of the doubt. I think the whole country, even his own supporters, have concluded that's not going to happen.
So, Karl, what about that?
So
Let's ask Karl about that. What do you think about what Joe just had to say?
Well, look, first of all, Trump still remains to have an advantage among those that are very enthusiastic. Joe's right. Among those who are very somewhat, she's now ahead. But the momentum is clearly going her direction. In early September, she was 32% of her supporters were very enthusiastic, now 43. 43 were very enthusiastic for him in early September, 47% today. So he still maintains his edge among the most enthusiastic, but it is a problem, no doubt about it. Here's another problem he's got. Neither one of these people is well thought of. Her favorable unfavorables in the ABC Washington Post, 42-56. His, 37-62. The problem for him is among the 14% in the sample who are not for Trump today and are not for Hillary Clinton, 71% is his unfavorable among those people. So he does have a path, but it's an awful tough one because people are tilted against him.
But again, people would say that about his path in the past. And so I'm just going back to what we've seen over the last several months and wondering if we're going to see a different result than many thought. Here's what John Cass wrote in the Chicago Tribune in a column. I want to get both of you to weigh in on the feeling in the country right now. He writes this: a political realignment is coming, no matter how this election turns out. But that won't happen for a while. In the meantime, we wait, stunned, and in a few weeks, we'll all become quite gamey. That's probably why Americans dream of taking a long, hot shower to scrub our brains out with soap. I certainly can relate to feeling that way, Joe. I wonder about just campaign fatigue, what that does for either candidate when it comes to who's actually showing up to vote.
Look, I do think there's a lot of fatigue out there, but I think both of them represent energy for the other side to turn out. I mean, even if you have questions about Trump, if you've got angst about Hillary, that's going to get you out. The Supreme Court, other things. The same with Hillary supporters. I actually don't believe it's going to be much lower turnout. But I do think that Colin's right about sort of the realignment. The clearly the parties are changing, who they're reaching, and who different groups are moving in support of one party or the other is absolutely happening right now. We won't see how it comes out until after the election, probably maybe even not until the midterms of 2018.
In the meantime, we all hope to get our hands on some of that soap, right, Carl, just to kind of get things clear.
Yeah, I think that's right. But, this point about realignment, what's interesting about it is every realignment that's happened in American politics has come about because a leader stepped forward with a positive and optimistic vision for the future of the country. Neither one of these candidates is offering such a vision. There'll be a realignment. The American political system's been at equilibrium for too long. One party's going to gain an advantage, but my sense is it's not going to be in this presidential election.
Interesting. Both of them feel like they are. Love Trump's hate or make America great again, but whether or not it's really fundamentally positive is an interesting question as well. Carl, Joe, great to have you both. Thank you very much.
Good to be back.
To the showers for everybody, right? For the first time ever, a Fox News anchor will be moderating a general election presidential debate. Award-winning journalist Chris Wallace, widely regarded as the best questioner in the business, will moderate the all-important final debate between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton. This make-or-break event, less than 3 weeks before the historic election of 2016, will be held this Wednesday, October 19th, in Las Vegas. And the best place to watch the first Fox-moderated debate, of course, is on the Fox News channel.
The long-awaited battle for Mosul has begun. The U.S.-led coalition coordinating with Iraqi forces to drive ISIS fighters out of this key city in the north. What we're learning about the strategy. And service restored 3 weeks after a deadly train crash in New Jersey. The extra precautions being taken to make sure riders there are safe. Also, we want to hear from you. Donald Trump has said that this election could be stolen from him as a result of widespread voter fraud. Do you agree or disagree with his statement? Our live chat up and running right now. Go to foxnews.com/happeningnow to join the conversation. A Fox News alert, and the battle for Mosul is underway now. Iraqi troops and Kurdish forces closing in on the city in a coordinated operation to drive out ISIS. The U.S.-led coalition also helping with support in the air and on the ground. And the outcome of this battle will have major consequences for the region. Connor Powell, live from our Mideast Bureau with more. Connor.
John, ISIS currently controls two major population centers, one Raqqa in Syria and the other Mosul in northern Iraq. But today, that operation, after months of planning, began today. Iraqi Prime Minister Abadi announcing on television early in the morning that the operation had begun. U.S. and coalition jets began pounding ISIS positions in and around Mosul around 2 a.m. And just after the sun rose in Iraq, Iraqi troops and Kurdish Peshmerga forces began to move closer and closer to that city of Mosul. Now, most of the fighting happening right now on the outskirts. We understand that several cities have been taken on the outskirts of Mosul, but Iraqi and Peshmerga fighters have yet to push into Mosul. The strategy, it appears, is to come from the south and the north and the east, allowing the western part of the country, of the city, to be open so that any ISIS fighters who do want to flee can flee. Also, they're expecting at least 1 million or so refugees to flee the city during the fighting. It's expected to be one of the largest humanitarian refugee crises this year alone. And the fight, though, is expected to take some time. Iraqi forces in both Fallujah, Tikrit, and Ramadi did take their time. They are trying to limit civilian casualties, also tried to give ISIS as much time to sort of flee out of the area to deal with cleaning up operations after they flee. Now, what we've seen in previous Iraqi cities is a lot of booby traps, a lot of fighting in some small areas, but ISIS has not put up a gigantic fight in places like Tikrit and Ramadi and Fallujah on other than some specific small areas in the cities, and that's what they expect as well, that ISIS will sort of hunker down in different parts of Mosul and that they will put up a fight there, but not for the larger city. But this will take some time, John. The Iraqis and the coalition are taking their time. They want to go in slowly to avoid civilian casualties.
It seems strange, though, that the coalition forces are giving ISIS fighters an opportunity to get out. I mean, doesn't that just allow them to cause problems another day?
I think the theory is that most of them will leave Iraq once they are given a chance to get out of Mosul. I don't know this for a fact, but I've heard people speculate that if they leave Iraq, the Iraqis will be perfectly happy to let them go into Syria and deal with them there. Obviously, there will be an operation at some point against Raqqa, but right now the Iraqis are primarily concerned with liberating their city, Mosul, not with what's going on across the border in Syria.
Yeah, complicated stuff. Connor Powell in our Mideast Bureau. Thank you, Connor.
Well, back here at home, rail service mostly restored at the Hoboken train terminal 3 weeks after that deadly crash. New Jersey Transit says 6 more tracks opened early this morning, while 2 tracks will remain closed for repairs. And as an extra precaution, New Jersey Transit officials say trains entering the station will reduce their speed from 10 miles an hour to 5. Officials say the train was traveling twice the speed limit when it crashed back in September, injuring more than 100 during the very busy morning rush. One woman died while standing on the platform when she was hit by debris.
One person killed in a massive explosion at a chemical plant. We'll tell you where this happened and what might have caused it. Plus, new questions in the Clinton email investigation over an alleged quid pro quo between a State Department official and FBI agents. The FBI just releasing the files, what those contain. Right now, 1 person is dead, 6 injured after an explosion in southwestern Germany. The blast went off early this morning at a facility owned by the chemical firm BASF. 6 people remain unaccounted for. Nearby residents are advised to stay inside and keep their doors and windows closed. The cause of the explosion under investigation, but we do know the facility is used to unload flammable liquids and liquid gas.
Now, this Fox News alert on a new development on the Clinton email investigation. The FBI has released files given to the House Oversight and Intelligence Committees that sources say contain allegations of a quid pro quo between a senior State Department official and FBI agents. This story just coming to light. Our Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live with more from our Washington Bureau. Catherine, what are you learning?
Well, thank you, Jenna. We're just going through the 100 pages of documents that were posted by the FBI within the last hour. And the critical player in this is someone called Patrick Kennedy. He is the Undersecretary for Management at the State Department, and he's like the Chief Operating Officer, and he served directly under then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton when she was using the server. And this is the critical FBI interview, and it comes from July of 2015. And in that interview, an FBI agent makes clear that there was a discussion of a quid pro quo between Kennedy and the FBI agent. And the quote reads in part, redacted, that is the FBI agent, indicated he had been contacted by Patrick Kennedy, Undersecretary of State, who had asked his assistance in altering the email's classification in exchange for a quid pro quo. Redacted, that's the FBI agent, advised that in exchange for marking the email unclassified, State would reciprocate by allowing the FBI to place more agents in countries where they are presently forbidden. There's also an additional 302. This one comes from September of 2015, and in that FBI interview, it makes clear that Kennedy wanted to change the classification to a code known as B9. B9 is a rarely used code. It's highly specialized for geographic intelligence. And it says here specifically, Kennedy further stated that the B9 classification would allow him to archive the document in the basement of the Department of State, never to be seen again. So you see what Kennedy's objective was. It was to shield the classification so that it would never be public, and this would do damage control for Secretary Clinton, Jenna.
How is that not a crime? Who directed this?
Well, the question is who directed it. Was Patrick Kennedy acting on his own? Was he acting at the behest of Secretary Clinton, who was then out of office, or did he just understand that that was required? What I would say is that based on WikiLeaks, we see now that there was clear coordination in the handling of the emails between the Department of State, which is funded by the taxpayer, and the Clinton campaign. We had statements late Saturday from the State Department and the FBI saying that this quid pro quo language was misleading and it did not align with the facts. But what in fact we see is the statements from the FBI and the State Department were the issues that were misleading, not the documents. It's very clear what went down here.
Catherine, thank you. More on this as we get it. Thank you very much.
Well, Donald Trump is crying foul 3 weeks before the presidential election. He is alleging voter fraud, accusing the media of rigging the race in favor of Hillary Clinton. Is he right to make those claims? Our media panel weighs in.
The corrupt media is trying to do everything in their power to stop our movement. Our media is indeed sick, and it's making our country sick, and we're going to stop it. The election is rigged. It's a rigged system. It's a rigged election. This is a rigged system, folks. The process is rigged. This whole election is being rigged. These lies spread by the media without witnesses, without backup or anything else, are poisoning the minds of the electorate.
There you hear Donald Trump ramping up his claims that the media are biased and that the election is rigged. The Republican nominee taking it even further, suggesting the polls are rigged as well. Just this morning he tweets, quote, "Of course there is large-scale voter fraud happening on and before Election Day. Why do Republican leaders deny what is going on? So naive." Let's talk about it with today's media panel. Kelly Riddell is a columnist and commentary writer for the Washington Times. Lynn Sweet is Washington bureau chief for the Chicago Sun-Times. And Alan Colmes, of course, you know, host of the Alan Colmes Show, nationally syndicated by Fox News Radio. Lynn, to you first, and just focusing on the polls. Polls have been wrong before. Could Donald Trump have an argument that the polls are tilted against him?
The polls writ large are, no, he doesn't have an argument unless he tells you where and what jurisdiction he's worried about. And if he had a real campaign, then his next announcement would be that the lawyers for Trump squad would be in a particular jurisdiction trying to make sure that the vote is fair. That's what happens when you suspect voter fraud. There are thousands, I believe, thousands of voting jurisdictions throughout the United States. You just can't make this blanket accusation, John, and have it make any sense without some facts behind it. So this assertion is not a fact-free one. You need to bring some evidence of a problem. He has not.
A couple of his surrogates and supporters, Rudy Giuliani, Newt Gingrich, were on the Sunday morning chat shows yesterday, and they sort of amplified on the claim that Donald Trump is making. I want to play this for you now.
When he talks about a rigged election, he's not talking about the fact that it's going to be rigged at the polls. What he's talking about is that 80 to 85% of the media is against him. That when you look at the New York Times and you pick it up every morning, on the top of the paper, there are 3 stories that are anti-Trump. Some of them totally baseless, some of them silly.
I think that without the unending one-sided assault of the news media, Trump would be beating Hillary by 15 points.
Kelly, take that on. Would Donald Trump be doing much better if the media weren't piling on?
Well, I think the fact that he's only losing to Hillary Clinton by 4 points in the latest Washington Post poll speaks to that. I mean, the media is throwing everything but the kitchen sink at Donald Trump, and then they're throwing the kitchen sink at him. Over the past week, by a 7-to-1 margin, Donald Trump's sex scandal was covered compared to the WikiLeaks scandal by the news media, and this just shows a blatant bias. It's Donald Trump against the media, against the Democrats, and against those in his own Republican Party. So what he needs to do is he needs to rile up the base, and this is an issue with the right leaning in the conservative base. Is there are legitimate fears of voter fraud going on, and he needs these voters to come out and turn out for him.
He's got to prove it.
Go ahead, Alan.
Well, he's got to prove it. I mean, he makes these claims, voter fraud. Where? When? As Lynn just said. And he, Rudy Giuliani, hear him say, oh, he's just talking about the media. He actually tweeted out, as you pointed out, it's illegitimate at the polls. He is questioning the legitimacy of an election, which is extremely dangerous. We have a peaceful transition of power in this country, and he's inciting people to try to rise up and claim a rigged election. This is the most dangerous thing we've seen in years in an American election.
I don't believe that at all. Mike Pence yesterday said that they would accept whatever the electoral outcome would be, and I take Mike Pence's word for it. And in terms of voter fraud, there's 1,000 people in the state of Virginia, my state of Virginia, that are registered to vote that are illegal. There is an FBI investigation right now of 20 people who registered for this election that are dead. So there is items of voter fraud that are going out. How widespread we want to make that is an argument, but there is voter fraud that's happening.
Wait, no one is saying that there is no voter fraud. Okay. Where it exists, address it. That's very different than saying that the election is rigged or that there's unknown voter fraud. You just actually proved a wonderful point. The system works. There was a problem. It's detected. It's being addressed. And I applaud you because you proved the point I think that Alan and I are trying to make. You have a specific situation, and you see and make sure that the local authorities are addressing it.
So what about in Pennsylvania, Lynn? So what about in Pennsylvania, Lynn, where the Secretary of State of Pennsylvania mailed out 2.5 postcards to people who had driver's license, urging them to register to vote. But the Secretary of State did not check whether these people who had the driver's license were illegal or legal residents and were applicable and were eligible to vote. This is out there still, and there is no investigation going on.
The problem is that Donald Trump is talking about this election, pre-voting, already being rigged, and there's no proof of that. He's already saying the election November 8th will be rigged. There's no proof of that. He's a desperate man trying to save his candidacy when he knows he can't win, and he's speaking inanely and insanely to save his behind. That's what he's doing.
Alan, I'd like to flip this back at you. Isn't it the Democrats saying that Russia is out trying to hack and influence our election right now?
Yes.
How is that not undermining our system?
You're trying to change the subject to try to save the family candidacy.
I'm just pointing out what the Democrats are doing.
Let's stick with voter fraud. Let's just stick with one thing so we could get through this segment. Let's stick with voter fraud.
Doesn't that undermine our electoral system?
You would like to change the subject to WikiLeaks and anything else beside a rigged election?
If your point is that we've got an honest and true electoral system, and I do believe that, then why are the Democrats out there trying to say that Russia has a hand and we should all be aware?
Donald Trump is undermining our democracy by trying to delegitimize an election. It's dangerous.
All right, Lynn, let me ask you this question. In any other election cycle, it would seem that the WikiLeaks revelations about what's been going on inside the Clinton campaign, attitudes about various people, would be front page news. But all of it seems to be getting buried under this avalanche of bad publicity about Donald Trump. Is that appropriate?
Well, I don't know if I agree with you. In this era of the internet, there's no true front page, as I lament the denouement of print. So that's not. There are plenty of stories on WikiLeaks, and there's an ebb and flow of a news cycle. Certainly, when you have You can't ignore the videotape with Donald Trump making sexual inappropriate remarks about women, to say the least. You can't ignore women coming forward who have stories to tell about sexual advances. He has a defense. He could make it. But the point is, there are so many outlets now for people to get information, and the WikiLeaks themselves are out there for people. WikiLeaks.org. You could look for yourself. This is an amazing opportunity for people who are curious. Just type in the names of people you're curious about, and those emails will pop up. So I think there is no curb to any information that anyone wants about Hillary Clinton and her emails, because of the internet, every story that's being written by the various news outlets is available to almost everybody.
Always fun to have you three on. We're going to have to wrap it up there. Thanks very much, Kelly
Thanks,
Riddell, Alan Colmes, Lynn Sweet. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's too bad they don't have a strong opinion on anything. This is so hard, right? Well, right now, tens of thousands of people in North Carolina are still feeling the devastation from Hurricane Matthew. That state estimates floodwaters have caused $1.5 billion in damages. And those figures could change as many areas are still underwater. Governor Pat McCrory is expected to give an update today at noon. In the meantime, cleanup continues for many who say they're lucky simply to be alive.
We really didn't have time to really do anything but just grab a few stuff, grab our babies, and go in the attic until the rescue team got there.
I saw all the water. Somebody banged on the door. It was like, come on, you got to get up there, evacuate. The community has made it so easy for us to just push forward. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. Today I'm ready to go to church.
Well, at least 26 people were killed in Matthew-related incidents. Some stretches of I-95 are still closed today.
An administrator at the University of Virginia taking on Rolling Stone magazine over its now discredited article about a gang rape on campus at a fraternity house there. Will this multi-million-dollar lawsuit hold up? Our legal panel takes a look. Plus, a former assistant football coach whose testimony helped convict Jerry Sandusky heads back to court. Why he is asking for millions from Penn State, where he played quarterback. Some new information on a story we have followed closely on Happening Now. Jury selection begins today in a defamation lawsuit against Rolling Stone magazine. University of Virginia administrator Nicole Eramo is seeking almost $8 million from the publication over its now discredited 2014 story about a woman being gang raped at a college fraternity on campus. Eramo says the article portrayed her as indifferent to the woman in question. So does she have a chance of collecting a judgment? Let's bring in our legal panel today. Heather Hansen is a trial attorney. Jonna Spilbor, a former prosecutor and criminal defense attorney. The judge has ruled that this former associate dean, dean of students at the school who is suing, is a public figure. Now, tell us first why that's important.
It is vital to the case, and it makes it a lot more difficult for her to prove her case. If she were not a public figure, the standard would be negligence. Was Rolling Stone negligent, or did they not use care in backing up their facts? Instead, because she's a public figure, it's actual malice. Did they know that what they were printing was wrong, and did they print it anyway, or did they have reckless disregard for the truth?
How does a dean of students become a public figure?
Well, that's just it. The court actually ruled her a limited purpose public figure, meaning she's a public figure for purposes of this lawsuit and the scandal that preceded it. She's not a general public figure. But the standard now is going to be the same, and as difficult as Heather pointed out, for purposes of this case. And what she did something very smart, however. In her complaint, she did allege actual malice. So she's got that going for her, and she's got a lot of facts in support of her claim.
She received death threats as a result of this article. I mean, people were writing the most horrible things to her. She's a dean of students at a university.
Yeah, I mean, she has some damages. Her job changed. She didn't get completely let go, but her job did change, and arguably she's making less money. But really what she now has to overcome is this hurdle of, can she prove that they had reckless disregard for the truth? Her best evidence, I think, is Rolling Stone went and asked Columbia to review their article, and Columbia really picked it apart pretty strongly.
Right.
That's going to be strong evidence for her. There is a defense for Rolling Stone where they're trying to separate the rape story from the way that they portrayed the dean, and that's going to be hard for the jury to figure out.
That Columbia Journalism School review of this article was actually a third longer than the article itself, and found that it was just badly done. You know, they didn't do the basics. They didn't get the names of the four, the reporter didn't get the names of the four guys that she, you know, said that the victim, the supposed victim, had said raped her.
Rolling Stone wanted to tell this story the way they wanted to tell the story, and the operative word here is it was a story. And and Columbia was right, and everybody else was right. The story got completely retracted 4 months after it was published. So I think factually speaking, if we can get over the legal hurdle, the dean has a case.
We will keep our eyes on this one and let viewers know what happens. We have to turn to another civil case, though, now. The civil trial begins today in Pennsylvania in the lawsuit filed by a former Penn State assistant football coach. Mike McQueary is looking for $4 million in damages. He claims the school retaliated against him by not renewing his contract after he once saw Jerry Sandusky sexually abusing a boy in the team shower. He reported it to his boss, then head coach Joe Paterno. McQuarrie's testimony eventually helped to convict Sandusky, but he doesn't have a job at the university anymore. Does he have a case, Heather?
You know, I do think that he has a case in the fact that he did go to Paterno, he did bring the facts forward, and now he's being portrayed as a liar and someone who participated in the cover-up. The problem is that this is a jury with 9 women on it, which sometimes makes a difference, and the claim for the defense is going to be you did not intervene, you did not go to the cops, you did not do anything. So is it truly defamation to say that you participated in the cover-up if you didn't do anything to bring this to light?
But he reported it to his boss. He also reported it to 2 school administrators the next day. What more is a guy supposed to do?
And that was a big point of contention back when this was actually occurring. But I think at the essence of any whistleblower case, which this is the person being fired because he was reporting a wrongdoing by the employer, or is he being fired for cause, for some other reason? And that's what the jury's going to have to measure here.
And that's where they're going to say he's being fired because he didn't intervene, didn't report it to the cops. It's a tough line for the administration to walk.
Well, he was suspended as soon as he reported, as soon as the investigation came to light. It's a strange story, and again, we'll keep viewers informed. Heather Hansen, Jonna Spilborn, thank you both.
Thanks, John.
Jenna.
Well, more tensions off the coast of Yemen with the U.S. warship in the crosshairs. Who could be behind a possible missile launch at the USS Mason? We'll get more into this story next.
Well, let's take a peek at Outnumbered coming up at the top of the hour. Sandra and Harris, what do you have?
We are going to crack open this Monday. Donald Trump ramping up his claims of a rigged election, but Democrats are calling it a scare tactic. Who is right about that, and will Trump accept the results of this election?
Plus, new FBI documents contain allegations of a quid pro quo between a senior State Department executive and FBI agents during the Hillary Clinton email investigation. Does this suggest a cover-up?
And if the election is stressing you out, you're not alone. The results of a new survey you won't want to miss. So stressed.
Are you stressed? All that, plus our hashtag one lucky guy. Outnumbered, top of the hour. His name starts with a Chris and
it does.
Steyerwalt.
And he is not stressed at all.
And it's 3 weeks till tomorrow. 3 weeks from tomorrow we vote. So
yes, sir.
Yeah.
All the stress will melt away then.
Yeah. Stress, by the way, dessert spelled backwards. So we're over it.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks. See you then.
A Fox News alert: the U.S. Navy investigating a possible missile attack on a group of American warships in the Red Sea. A top Navy official says the U.S. destroyer, the USS Mason, appeared to have come under attack, and the Associated Press reporting one of the ships saw what was believed to be missiles being fired out of Yemen. All of this very important and crucial, of course. Greg Palcott is live in London with more. Greg?
Hi, Jenna. Yes, more tension off the coast of Yemen this past weekend, and once again, the U.S. Navy is being targeted. It happened again off of Yemen. Officials are investigating what seemed like missiles fired at the USS destroyer Mason and other ships in the Red Sea, possibly by Houthi rebels in that country. If confirmed, it would be the third such attack in just a week, and this is in response to 2 other attacks last last week, another ship launched a barrage of cruise missiles at the Houthis. They knocked out radar installations said to be used in those strikes. Navy officials say that perhaps other radar was used in this weekend's barrage. The Mason used counter-defense measures, we are told. There was no damage. There were no sailors